This week on the awareness angle, we have Twitter X data leaks, confidential military papers blowing in the street, Microsoft Teams infiltration, URL phishing techniques, GCHQ X Intern brings a national security risk, Android crypto stealers, and a whole lot more. Welcome to the awareness angle, simplifying security awareness. This is the podcast that brings you the latest cybersecurity news from the past week and gives you the security awareness angle on it. All views and opinions expressed in this podcast are our own and do not reflect those of our employers. And with me, as always, is my wonderful co-host, Mr. Luke Pettigrew. Hello, Luke.
Hey, Ant.
How are
you?
you?
I remembered.
You remembered? Yeah.
Doing well, thank you. How are you? How's your week?
My week was good. It's been busy. It's been hectic. I interviewed our first guest for the podcast, which episode will be out in a couple of weeks. And it was a wonderful story about a company that doesn't simulate phishing. They just don't do it at all.
That's going to be one to listen to. I'm
sure we're all actually a little envious. Yeah. I heard her on a webinar talking about it, and I was like, I need to have a talk with you. I need to find out more about this because I think people will care about this. So,
interesting.
If anyone's listening and has an interesting security awareness tale to tell that you think others might be interested in, give us a shout. hello@riskycreative.com, or reach out to me and Luke on LinkedIn, etc. Find us and let's have a chat. Let's tell some stories. It's really good. Right. Should we get on with it this week?
Yeah, let's get to the news.
Let's get to the news. Okay, starting us off this week, the first story we have, Twitter X, as it is, X, formerly known as Twitter, which I think is the official way to describe the company now, has been hit by 2.8 billion profile data leak in what is alleged to be an inside job.
Wow.
Yeah, so this was announced just a few days ago. It surfaced on infamous breach forums, and according to a post by a user named Thinking One, the leak is a result of a disgruntled ex-employee, I can't believe there's a single one of them, who allegedly stole the data during a period of mass layoffs. And if it's true, which, jury's still out, this would be the largest social media data leak in history. But it says, surprisingly, neither X nor the broader public appears to be aware of it. So there's around 400 gigabytes worth of data, which, talking in nice ways, is 2.8 billion profiles. The poster claims they tried contacting X through multiple methods to discuss this, but they received no response. So frustrated with the lack of acknowledgement, they took matters into their own hands and decided to merge it with another breach from January 2023. So what's in this breach? What it doesn't contain is email addresses. But what it does contain is account creation dates, user IDs and screen names, profile descriptions and URLs, location and time zone settings, display names all the way back to 2021, follow counts, tweet counts and timestamps, friend counts, listed counts, source of the last tweet, and status settings. So it's a pretty weird, this isn't crown jewels data. It's not like username, password, email address. But there's some questions around this data, which is why it's interesting. So as of January this year, X, formerly Twitter, had around 335 million users. So the question is, how is it possible that data from 2.8 billion users has been leaked? And what they're saying is that this might include either aggregated or historical data. So it could include bot accounts that were created and later banned, inactive or deleted accounts that still lingered in historical records. So it's an interesting one. Yeah. And it's, you could ask why has X not commented on this at all? And it might be that X don't really care.
It's quite...
maybe there's no one left to comment on it.
Maybe not. That's weird.
When you look at, so I jumped onto the technology subreddit where this was being discussed, and some of the comments make for interesting reading. Other people's opinions. Obviously, in some circles, there's not a lot of love for X, and formerly known as Twitter at the moment. But the top comment says 2.8 billion accounts, 340 million users. If this leak proves that more than 80% of Twitter accounts are bots, it should cause some damage. Can you imagine, like 80% of accounts are bots? It also proves, the next comment says, it also proves they don't delete your data. So, yeah, I mean, someone's called out the DSGVO, which is that the German data? Yeah, General Data Protection Regulation. That's what Germany calls GDPR. So there could be a hefty GDPR fine heading their way, which would be interesting. So, yeah, it's. I think that's one to watch. It's going to be interesting to see what comes of that. It's an important message as well. Disgruntled employees, layoffs. There's many companies out there making redundancies at the moment, and you don't always know what's walking out of the door with them. So,
yeah.
Right. I'll move on to the next one. Next story I have. And this is one, I saw this and my jaw dropped. Okay. And mainly for the pictures, it was the photos. I was like, wow. Okay. So let me just get this on screen. This is sensitive army papers found scattered in the street. So this is in the UK. Piles of papers containing sensitive military information have been found scattered along a city street. So we can zoom in to these images. Look at that. That's
incredible.
It's incredible. And you might go, oh, that could be any old paperwork. But then you see an image here that actually has a bit of paper that says official-sensitive on it. The papers include, now this is quite a serious data breach, if this data is accurate. So they include soldiers' ranks, emails, shift patterns, weapon issue details, and information which appears to relate to accessing weapon storage and an intruder detection system. So they were discovered spilling out of a black bag in the Scotswood area of Newcastle by a football fan. I don't quite know why that's relevant. On the 16th of March. And according to information security consultant Gary Hibbard, posed a significant threat to the individuals named in them. The Ministry of Defence said it was looking into the matter urgently and was conducting an internal investigation. Downing Street have not commented, but they've said they haven't gone into any specifics. But they say that the papers appear to be connected to the British Army regiments and barracks at Catterick Garrison. So one document was headed Armoury Keys and Hold IDS Codes, which the BBC understands relates to accessing an armoury and an intruder detection system. It's like, wow, this is shift patterns.
Yeah, I can see there's some more photos on there of the shift pattern, which says 30th September 2024. I wonder how old or how recent this sort of stuff comes up to.
Yeah. So the guy that found this reported it to the local police. So they came along and picked it up. Government guidance on sensitive information reveals such documents could, in the wrong hands, lead to moderate to short-term damage to UK or allied forces' military operations. However, in some exceptional circumstances, the compromise of more sensitive official information could lead to a threat to life. All such documents should be disposed of in a burn bag or by shredding in an approved machine. Well, obviously that hasn't happened. Someone's, by the looks of it, taken them home and has just put them in a bin bag and put it out for the bin men. And then just by chance, that bin bag has been split and the papers have blown it's
It's a bizarre story, isn't it?
how does this stuff happen? It feels like Hollywood almost, doesn't it? Like there was a scuffle and the bag split and then people ran off. You could write a story about this, but it's pretty scary stuff, especially when surely you have an expectation of privacy if you're in the armed forces. You need trust. Trust is a word that comes up again and again and again in the conversation I'm having at the moment. You need to trust employees. You need to trust your employer.
I think there'd be a lot of processes in place for them as well, which obviously haven't been followed.
Yeah. This is a great story to tell if you're an awareness professional, because this really highlights the importance of paperwork. And I think especially now we're all working remotely, if we're printing stuff off at home or you're taking stuff home, we don't all have shredders at home. Maybe we need to buy our staff. Shredders are like £20, $20, $30. So if you need to give people shredders, give them shredders, because if this was shredded, it wouldn't be so bad. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's an important message about data security paperwork. The amount of times I used to find confidential documents sat on a printer because the printer had run out of paper, someone else has come along, refilled it, and then it's continued its print job. Yeah. I think that's a powerful story to tell. Right, moving on to the next story. I've recently moved to a business that doesn't use Slack. It uses Microsoft Teams, and God, it's alien to me. I hate Microsoft Suite. After using Google for like 12 years, coming to Microsoft is so frustrating. But this was quite interesting. So a recent cybersecurity campaign has highlighted the tactics. So it's combining phishing, voice phishing, Microsoft Quick Assist, and Microsoft Teams to infiltrate networks, basically. And this was quite an interesting one because the attack begins with a Microsoft Teams message sent from what looks like a legitimate external user. And then alongside that comes a phishing call designed to build trust and guide the target into running a PowerShell command. So these will typically be a message from IT support saying, we've detected that your device has been compromised. We need to run this script, run this code on your device to help. And it's like, wow, hang on. So yeah, and then it runs a PowerShell script that basically gets control of your device. There's some remote support stuff, and it's game over at that point. But it's that initial intrusion. It's you get a Teams message, what people think is a secure environment, and then you'll get a Teams message from someone claiming to be IT support. And I think this might not be unusual. Like, if you have an IT support function, how do they reach out to your employees? How do they verify that they are real? Is it by a Teams message followed up by a phone call? Because, that seems like a pretty good way to verify legitimacy. So I think that's quite an interesting one. The actual article by Ontinu is quite a detailed technical breakdown. So if you're one of the more technical listeners, then we'll share that in the newsletter. But it's interesting. HackRead have got an article about it, which helps explain it more simply for those that aren't technical. So Microsoft Teams message, phishing call to build trust. They guide the target into running a PowerShell command. That command downloads a payload, which is the first stage of the chain. Quick Assist, which is a legitimate remote support tool built into Windows, is then used by the attacker to gain remote access. And then TeamViewer comes into play to a hidden folder. And then there's all kinds of side-loaded DLLs and background jobs, and it goes on and on. So it's quite a sophisticated attack. So if you have people in your business, if you use Teams, you need to establish the ways that support will contact them. And you need to communicate that to your workers. You need to say, if IT support contacts you, this is how they do it, and this is how they will verify they are genuine. If you just leave it for people to guess, you could be leading yourself open to a whole world of pain. The other thing is, maybe you need to close your Teams off so you can't receive external messages from external people.
Yeah, I was just reading into that. It's, by default, it's on for allowing access for other 365 organizations to communicate, which
Wow.
seems like, why would you have it on by default?
Convenience over compliance, I suppose.
Yeah.
So larger organizations with bigger teams to manage things like O365 may have that restricted.
Have allow domains or whatever.
Yeah. Smaller businesses, though, that, are just subscribing to this, that have grown from like 1 user to 10 users to 20 users, whatever.
Yeah, they're the ones.
They're the ones that will be really vulnerable to this, especially if they use third-party IT support companies. I used to work for a third-party IT support company, MSP, and if you work for a company, if your IT support is external, it's even more important that if you're not locking this down, you communicate what the right way to check and verify is, because otherwise you might lose everything. We'll put details of that in the newsletter. If you aren't subscribed to the newsletter, why aren't you subscribed to the newsletter? It comes out every Monday with every episode. You can subscribe at riskycreative.com, or you can search for the awareness angle on LinkedIn and find the newsletter there. It contains details of all the stories we discuss in every single episode. It's free, it's independent, there's no adverts, and it tells you what's in this stuff, what's coming up, some interesting stories, and some things we've seen. So get yourself the Awareness Angle newsletter. Over 500 security professionals get that. So we'd love that to be more.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, sign up.
Sign up. Right. My last news story this week, and then I know you've got a couple. And I saw this. It's not so much news, but it was a good article. And it had a great image in it. So this is how to identify URL phishing techniques. So it says in 2025, phishing is still one of the most ubiquitous and effective attack vectors that cybercriminals use to steal credentials. It's right up there. They use it to steal credentials, distribute malware, compromise organizations. So this blog post actually breaks down some of the common URL phishing tactics. And it discusses different methods to protect against them. But there was one image in here that I thought was really, really good. So let me just display this for you. And I'll talk, those of you that are listening and not watching, if you're listening to this on a podcast platform, get this on YouTube and you can see it. We'll also put a link to this in the newsletter. So how to identify URL phishing techniques, anatomy of a URL. So this is great because it actually breaks down how a URL is constructed nice and simply. So protocol, HTTPS, : / subdomain, academy, domain.tcm-sec, tld.com / courses, which is a subdirectory, and then the file, and then the parameter, which is brilliant. And then it gives you examples of subdomain spoofing. So here you can see the legitimate google.com versus google.com.evilsite.com. And then it explains about bit squatting, which is characters that look similar, like an L and an I. So it might be google.com versus googie.com. And then there's dictionary typo squatting, URL shortening, homoglyph attacks, and then legitimate services. So I thought this was a really, really good image. Like you could almost redesign that within your organization or use TCM securities. And I think a lot of people this helps. It's a really simple way and it helps break down some of the myths around this, I think.
Yeah, that's interesting. Never really particularly thought about doing it in that way, I guess. You usually would talk about one of them, perhaps, and not really show them all on one page. Yeah, no.
If you look at the article goes into way more detail than that, right? So in the article, it talks about the anatomy of the URL and goes into all the different parts of it. And then it explains in detail about subdomain spoofing and lookalike domains and typo squatting and all the different stuff. And this is really good stuff that you could almost do a series of awareness items
There's a lot
on each
there.
of these. Like, I saw a post earlier, and I can't remember where I saw it, but someone was asking about, is there a cybersecurity podcast series that are between 5 to 10 minutes long that they can distribute to their workers? I think you could chuck all of that. You could chuck that article into ChatGPT and say, can you give me script for each of these phishing types? I want them to be 5 minutes long. And you could do it. And it'd be really, really simple. And you could show examples. It's a really interesting topic that you could add to your stack.
Yeah, for sure. Typically, you kind of just throw them all under one umbrella of a malicious URL or something. Yeah.
There's interesting. Each of those is an interesting and unique attack type. And we're so used to telling people with a phishing email to check the URL.
Yeah.
But do we tell them enough what to check for? And maybe if we create content like this, when there's real phishing incidents in your business, you can tell a story about them and then you can say, oh, that was bit squatting. Here's a video on bit squatting. And then you can kind of build up that content. Or here's a 5-minute podcast talk about bit squatting. And you can build up that content.
Yeah, no. Interesting thought.
Yeah. Interestingly, I have just been signed out of my Google Doc, which is interesting considering I've sat here in it. It's all right. I've just signed back in again. It's not a problem. I use a password manager, which makes signing in very easy. You should use a password manager if you don't use a password manager. You do. I know you do. Right. Moving on to the next story, which I think is yours, sir.
Yeah, so a couple of stories that I saw in the news. So it's a few days old now, but a story about how a ex-GCHQ intern admitted that they'd risked national security with a data breach that they had intentionally done, basically. So, yeah, former intern pleaded guilty to risking national security after he took secret data home. So, this chap basically admitted that he caused an offence, which is under the Computer Misuse Act in the UK. This was back in 2022, where he took his work phone into a top secret area, connected it to a top secret workstation, and transferred sensitive data from that machine to his phone, where he then took it home and transferred it to a hard drive on his personal computer. So yeah, it says here that top secret is the classification given to the government's most sensitive information, where compromise might cause widespread loss of life or threaten the security or the economic well-being of the country or friendly countries. So quite serious.
Yeah, it's right up there. Yeah.
So yeah, it's quite an incredible story there that they were so easily able to do this. Not quite sure yet. I didn't quite understand particularly why they had done it. I presume they were ex-intern after they did it, not before, but it doesn't quite say. There's probably not much information. I guess it's a lot of legal stuff going on around it.
So top secret is, so just looking at the Cabinet Office online, top secret classification tier is reserved for the most sensitive information assets that directly support or inform national security of the UK or its allies, and require extremely high assurance of protection from the most serious threats, with the use of secure isolated networks and a highly secure physical infrastructure. Plugging one's phone in and transferring the documents to their handset doesn't sound like a secure, isolated network and a highly secure physical infrastructure.
No, it's
No.
definitely not. And I guess maybe for those that don't know GCHQ, right, there are like intelligence and national security, government communications headquarters. So
Yes.
not just
Yes.
any old business.
Government Communication Headquarters is the intelligence and security organisation responsible for providing intelligence and information assurance to the government and armed forces of the UK, is the Wikipedia description. So yes, it's the building in London is quite famous. Yeah, so it's yeah.
But yeah, it's quite an incredible story, really, and something to think about with how easily something like that is done, even at such a business, I guess, or place. Lots of things to think about. I guess how someone's able to do that. I guess they must have found it in some kind of log at some point, perhaps, or maybe some alert came up and that's how they found it. I don't know if they really say much about that. But,
so the timelines kind of add up. Like, apparently he did it on the 24th of August. He's arrested in September and his home was searched. So
right.
The offence happens. A week or two later, it's detected and then they take action. So probably quite quickly. So there is a window there. There's also some unrelated charges around, that aren't pleasant from around a similar time. So it's I'm shocked, absolutely shocked that he was able to take a work phone into a top secret area, connect it to a top secret workstation, and transfer sensitive data from it.
Yeah, you think they'd have no accessible ports or something, or blocked in some way.
We both worked at an organisation that blocked USB transfer on a number of devices. The organisation I work for currently, I can't upload an image to ChatGPT. I can't upload a file to ChatGPT. You know, there's controls in place that prevent me from doing stuff. And the data I handle is way less sensitive than that.
Yeah,
I'm shocked. I'm shocked that it was able. It shouldn't have happened. He shouldn't have done it. But I'm shocked that he was able to do it. I'm also not surprised, but I don't think it's great.
No, definitely not a great image to be sort of out there now. That was a thing that happened.
So I think, what's the awareness angle on that? Like,
I mean, for some businesses, they probably care more than others. Obviously, they should have had that in place in terms of stopping people from being able to do such a thing.
I think from an awareness perspective, there's also, if you are thinking of doing this, you will get caught.
Exactly.
The chances of getting caught and getting found out and then being in the news or something like that is not great.
But people doing it unintentionally and with innocent intentions, I guess. They've just copied a file to work on it in some other way at home or something, and they don't realize that they've just caused a data breach.
Most data breaches are accidental. I can't remember the statistic, but there is a statistic about how many are malicious and accidental. And I think, here we go. Stanford research. This is from the Verizon data breach. Actually, no, before. I've got this. So this is when is this? A 2020 report. So it's not very old. 9 out of 10 data breaches are caused by humans, and 88% of all data breaches are caused by mistakes. So, it's rare that a data breach is malicious. And when it is malicious, like, I know I shouldn't transfer data to my home device, but I want to work from at home. That's one thing. But I'm taking this to cause you harm, or because I shouldn't, is another thing, and that's extremely rare. So, yeah.
Yeah, that was that story.
Yeah, good one.
And
Well,
then,
not a good one, but you know what I mean. Good story.
The next one was a piece of Android malware called Crocodilus.
Crocodilus, I like that. That's probably a Latin name for a crocodile, or it might just sound like a Latin name for a crocodile.
So yeah, this was new malware on Android that can steal crypto or banking information. It's quite a sophisticated method that I've not really seen or heard about before, where it essentially uses fake overlays on top of your app to trick you, I guess.
Wow.
This is a news story where it says about a cybersecurity firm, Threat Fabric, has found a new family of Android malware that launches fake overlays. And basically, I mean, we can probably bring it up on the screen or overlay it, but it tricks you with a fake screen of a pin code entry, like it knows what app you're, or what kind of app you're accessing, and tells you, oh, you need to back up your crypto wallet key, and then you click continue, and it brings you up a pin code to sort of enter in what you've. I mean, entering your details really, and then it's gone off to the hackers. So it seems to be, so that's sort of an overlay there.
Wow.
It's probably, I don't know if that's an actual thing or if it's a mock-up, but
that's from Threat Fabric's website. So once you've requested accessibility service, connects to a command and control server to receive instructions, and the overlays to be used, it runs continuously, monitoring app launches and displaying overlays to intercept credentials. That's mad.
Yeah. So it seems to be Android and bypasses any protections that Android 13 has. So it might be a case that the more recent versions aren't actually vulnerable to this. I'm not sure. I was trying to read about that, but no, it's a different sort of attack that I've seen, but seems to be targeting Turkey and Spain, according to this news story. Not quite sure why those two countries. But it's quite amazing that it sits there in real time and knows what app you're opening and intercepts it.
Even if it like Android 13 isn't the latest Android version, 14's been out a while, but
I think 15's even out in some phones. Yeah.
So 17% as of March, according to StatCounter, 17.3% of Android versions are 13. So it's still a huge amount of people. And again, it's going for crypto wallets. It's like going for the big, not necessarily the big bucks, but crypto. Once it's gone, right? That's still the case. Once it's out of your wallet and in someone else's wallet, it's gone. There's no guarantees there, is there?
Yeah. So it seems currently targeting users in Turkey and Spain. It seems to be that the developers are around that area. And I imagine if it works, it's probably going to start spreading a bit more.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what you see. Like it might be, if the developers were Turkish, for example, then you might see that it gets translated very quickly into English or other places, and then just spreads. Or they sell the kit to other potential hackers.
Yeah.
That's quite often the case. We've built this tool. Here it works. Would you like to buy it for yourself? And they'll sell it on the dark web.
Yeah, it seems to be then, that this is coming from other like infected Android apps that people are probably downloading either from the store or side loading. And that seems to be how it's sort of getting into devices.
Sideloading's always been a risk. Like you should be able to trust the store. And I get that Android, like the App Store, I think Anecdotally, I think the App Store on Apple is slightly safer, but the Google Play Store, with the amount of apps it must get to coming in every day, we talked about Steam games on previous episodes, and that's another one. Like, quite often you just need to trust, you can't...
The platform. You trust the platform.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah, sideloading those are different. Like, you really are leaving yourself wide open, sideloading apps. And it used to be that every now and again, a legitimate company would tell you to sideload the app. I think that's what Epic Games did when they got pulled from the stores. If you want to play Fortnite, so sideload. It's like, oh, that's not really great advice, is it?
No.
No.
I think that's the general message, isn't it?
Yeah.
Make sure people are aware of being careful where they get the apps from. Make sure it's an official app store, really. And obviously, even then, be careful what you're downloading. Make sure it's the real app and one with some reviews and not a clone app or something.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, yeah, that was that story.
We do have the rest of this week's top security stories in plain English. No jargon, no drama, just the things you need to know. Let's run through them now. Donald Trump is going to hold a White House meeting this week as on TikTok as the deadline nears, so April the 5th, which has been and gone by the time this episode's released. You will know what's happening with TikTok again. We're here again. Trump, Vice President J.D. Vance and his top advisors are discussing an acquisition. So we'll find out what's happening with TikTok, or you'll know by the time this episode's released. The UK has set out new reporting requirements for critical infrastructure. So it was teased in July, but on April the 1st, it wasn't an April Fool's. The UK government unveiled the Cybersecurity and Resilience Bill, aiming to bolster the nation's defences against escalating cyber threats. This announcement's timely, given the increased frequency and sophistication of cyber attacks targeting critical infrastructure. It mandates that organisations within critical sectors report significant cyber incidents to their respective regulators and the National Cybersecurity Centre within 24 hours of detection. That's not long. Followed by a comprehensive report within 72 hours. Additionally, legislation broadens its scope to include managed service providers and data centres, recognising the roles that they play in the digital supply chain. That's going to be an interesting one. I think there's fines of £100,000 a day on those. So,
or 10% of turnover, I think. It's like another alternative.
Those deadlines, man, 24 hours of detection, you have to report it. And a comprehensive report within 72 hours. The amount of calls the Big Four are going to get saying, we need you tomorrow because we need to provide a report within 48 hours. And they'll be like, It's going to start costing people a lot of money, which is fine because there's so much money flying around at the moment. SVG phishing. On March 28th, ARNLab Security Intelligence Center reported a new phishing malware campaign utilizing scalable vector graphics, or SVG files, to evade detection. The method, and this sounds really old, but the method embeds malicious scripts within SVG files, and these are often disguised with the file names like play voicemail transcription.svg or access document remittance receipt blah blah blah.svg. When you open these, the files redirect users to counterfeit capture pages, designed to steal sensitive information. And the malware employs advanced techniques to obstruct analysis, blocking automation tools, disabling specific key inputs, preventing right clicks. So the development underscores the increasing sophistication of phishing attacks and highlights the need for heightened vigilance. Now, this is an interesting one because SVG files, image files with coding, tale as old as time. That's like, it's not new. Let's hide some code in a file somewhere.
Yeah, I did think, not every user is going to know what an SVG is, right? It's quite a particular file that maybe only a graphic designer or web developer would sort of handle typically. So
I'm going to put you on the spot. Can you explain what an SVG file is?
Oh God. Well, it's a bunch of code, I guess, that creates an image, but it's obviously, as it says, as its name, scalable vector graphics, so it can be infinitely scaled without losing resolution, because there is no real resolution to it. But yeah, you're not going to know that unless
no need to squirm anymore. You got it right. That's fine. That's my understanding of the SVG file. Yeah. So, like, and these play voicemail transcription, access document remittance. Like, I'm sorry, play voicemail transcription. Why is it an image file? Why is it an SVG file? Receipt. That shouldn't be an SVG file. That should be a PDF or a JPEG or a PNG. Maybe we shouldn't be allowing SVG files into mailboxes, and maybe we should be blocking, filtering them out. Or we should be telling our users, if you see an SVG file, be careful, be wary. That's a red flag. So
yeah, definitely.
Moving on, and this is breaking at the time of us recording this. Royal Mail investigates data leak claims. So a threat actor has leaked over, or is claimed, it's alleged, to have leaked over 144 gigabytes of data, which is allegedly stolen from their systems. Apparently includes customers' personally identifiable information, MailChimp mailing lists, delivery locations, internal Zoom meeting recordings, and more. That sounds nasty. The breach is linked to Spectos, a third-party data collection and analytics service provider for Royal Mail, whose systems were compromised on March the 29th, so only a few days ago. Spectos have confirmed unauthorized access to systems and personal customer data. Cybersecurity firm Hudson Rock suggests the attackers gained access using credentials from a Spectos employee compromised in 2021. Despite the breach, Royal Mail states that there's been no impact on operations and services continue to function as normal, but the Zoom recordings are out there and delivery locations and customers' PII is now in the wild. So I'm sure we're going to hear a lot more on that over the coming days. And the last one, we kind of touched on it last week. It's not so much of a news item, but I've seen this mentioned in various stories. Captures. Watch out for fake captures. Some phishing attacks include a capture that looks legit, but after you pass it, you're told to copy and paste some code into your browser's console. And that's not okay. No capture should ask you to paste stuff into a window and then press run. So some really nasty stuff can happen and you lose your data, your system, all kinds of stuff. So if a capture asks you to control and V or paste something somewhere, massive red flag. Stop, step away, close the window, call your IT support, or just run a scan. This is a problem. That's the end of this week's top security stories.
That's going to be one to discuss next episode, I'm sure.
Yeah, I think we'll probably go into detail in that next time. Right. Moving on then, I think we have some awareness next. So we have. Is this one yours, Luke? Are you gonna run with this one?
Yeah, I mean, I dropped it in there. Thought it was quite interesting, perhaps.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, it's a story about the Signal Gate, as they've called it, which I think we spoke about last episode briefly, if I remember right.
I think we mentioned it without getting too. We acknowledged its existence. I don't think we really went deeply into it because we tried to veer away from politics. But
no, I mean, I'm sure everyone's seen it, right? So they're probably aware of what happened.
Those that weren't aware, confidential military operations were discussed in a Signal chat, and they didn't realise they'd invited a reporter to the chat where they were talking about military plans. And a reporter not only saw the whole chat, but has published the whole chat.
Yeah. So yeah, it's just a story that basically says that it proves that, once again, human error is still the number one cybersecurity threat, which I think, definitely has proved. And then, this story goes into talk about Mimecast's 2025 State of Human Risk Report, which has a nice graphic of security professionals believe there is a higher level of risk of mistakes in these areas, and 84% is inadvertently leaking data. And as you can see there, a lot more, including oversharing on the social media, which is quite, as that sort of shows, quite a common thing, right?
Yeah.
And that can be unintentional as well.
Yeah, people aren't aware that either they're not aware that they can't do it, or they're not aware that what they're doing contains sensitive data, maybe. I mean, the Signal one, I think, let's not get too involved in it, but there's probably a belief that Signal's secure, right? So they can do that. But I don't think government communication should be done via a Signal chat. The UK government, a few years ago got in trouble for using WhatsApp. And then when trying to be held accountable, they claimed that WhatsApp messages had been lost when they transferred phones, which is why WhatsApp's not great. I know businesses use WhatsApp, directors in businesses use WhatsApp to chat with other directors, like it happens, but it shouldn't be done. It's also since been reported that the same group of people in the US government were also using Gmail, personal Gmail. So, and these are the people that were moaning about Hillary's email servers. So look, we won't get into it, but it's the infrastructure. You've got to have a secure infrastructure, and then you've got to explain to people why it's important that they use it.
Yeah, definitely.
That they stick to it.
Yeah, I think it's well just on this news story mentions about the younger generation perhaps are used to using these kind of tools potentially in their personal life, and I mean even in general, people are used to using these for personal life, right? Like WhatsApp and then just a Gmail account, so they probably don't think much of it, right? They just do it because they kind of can. So definitely some awareness around the risks and what you kind of can't really be doing. Probably something to think about.
Yeah, no, I think so. Definitely think so. Right. The other awareness we had this week, the Ouch newsletter.
Yeah.
Okay.
You can do it.
Okay. The Ouch newsletter. So for those of you that don't know, SANS have a newsletter called Ouch Security Awareness, which is part of their awareness program. And this month, it's now being released in podcast form. Clearly, podcasts are on trend at the moment. So each of the podcasts covers the material covered in Ouch, but they go into a little bit more detail, and you can listen in the podcasting app of your choice. So if you like Ouch newsletter, this one I listened to, Lance Spitzner from SANS himself is recording it. It's on YouTube if you want to look at Lance's lovely face, or you can listen to his dulcet tones on podcast platforms. And again, we'll put a link to that in our own newsletter. Nothing wrong with that. Couple more bits of awareness to let you know. This week, so you're listening to this, if you're listening to this week, the 8th to the 10th of April at the NEC in Birmingham, the National Cybersecurity Show is on. 3-day event, big event, run. It's lots of exhibitors, lots of talks. The agenda looks really, really interesting. I'm going to be going there one day. Don't know which day yet. So if you do see me, give me a shout. It'll be great to connect. And one last thing to tell you, I've got a couple of speaking gigs coming up. I've been invited to a couple of events. The next one is later this month at Leeds Digital Festival. So their digital mini festival takes place on the 29th of April. And I'm going to be part of a really exciting panel at the Granary in Leeds, talking about the cyber threats keeping CISOs awake. So there's going to be some AI, there'll be some, human risk is obviously something I'll be talking about at great depth. So that's hosted by Pentest People. So details of that I'll put in the newsletter as well. It'd be great if you're in or around Leeds. It's only a couple of hours by train from London. There's a networking event afterwards, which would be really good. Get yourself to Leeds.
Awesome.
Right.
Sounds exciting.
Yeah, I'm excited by that. It should be an interesting event. Yeah. The agenda, there's panel discussion and then Q&A, and then there's networking and drinks afterwards. So there's going to be things like cyber skills shortage is going to be discussed, and supply chain attacks, ransomware. It's action. There's a lot to talk about in a short space of time, so it should be an interesting one. Right, moving on with that. Last week we talked about Vivida, and we talked about Vivida Reels. And if you weren't aware of what that is, it's a fresh approach on security training and education. So think TikTok for security training. And we demoed it in last week's episode. We were both very impressed. It's something fresh, something new, which is great to see. And something you mentioned in that, Luke, would be great if you could put your own little adverts in, like, oh, we have a webinar coming up, or have you done this month's survey, or that kind of thing. Well, funnily enough, I think they heard us before we even published it, because we were recording on the Thursday, and apparently on the Friday, that feature actually went live. So when they listened to us on the Monday, they were like, oh, we've just launched that. That's brilliant. So yes, an addition to Vivida Reels is that you can add custom calls to action in there. So that product just got a little bit better. I am going to try and arrange a chat with Simeon from Vivida for us to talk through Reels and why they've done it, what the approach is. So hopefully that's going to be coming to a podcast episode in the next few weeks. And now I've said it, Simeon, you've got to do it. So fingers crossed we'll get him on and I'll have a chat with Simeon.
No, that's cool. Nice to see that they've already thought about that. Well, it's a shame it wasn't because of my idea.
Well, we can always claim that, can't we? I mean, yeah.
No, excited to see how that progresses.
Yeah. I'll be having a close look at the product in the next couple of weeks as well. So I'll get to see it in a bit more detail, which would be fun.
Awesome.
Yeah. Right. Did you have anything else this week?
No.
Okay. I've got one last thing that I'll just whiz through, and this is something that I saw on Reddit, in the cybersecurity subreddit a couple of weeks ago. There was a question, and it was, what are common things that people do on the internet that can actually be harmful for your security? And I thought this was, the comments on this were fairly interesting. I won't go through loads of them because Reddit's Reddit. We'll put a link to it in the newsletter, so if you want to go in deep. But some of these top level comments I thought was interesting. So this person's writing an article about cybersecurity and wanted to know some of the stuff that is actually dangerous, but most people do. So I'm looking for professional stuff that most people don't know. So I don't want stuff like, you should not install apps that look harmful, or you should not click random links. And they didn't want to ask AI, which is quite nice, because most people would just go to ChatGPT or Claude or something and ask it.
Yeah.
So the top comment, probably one of the more common ones, is using the same password for all accounts and not using multi-factor authentication. So many accounts are hacked, and when there's large-scale breaches, and hackers just use the same password on different accounts. And we know hackers do that, right? They'll get a username and a password, and they'll just try it everywhere in the hope that people don't have multi-factor authentication set up. So, and then the comment under that, my Facebook was hacked. It wasn't hacked. You just use the same password that you'd used for that account on a freeclipart.com 8 years ago. Like, yeah. Password reuse. Use a password manager. Like, they're not expensive. Keeper's great. I use NordPass now, which I really, really like. It's on, it's not very expensive. The next one, uploading personal documents to your image compressor, format converter websites. It's got to be one of the most ignored ways of giving your info to an attacker. Oh, we spoke about that last week.
Yeah.
Yeah. So PDF file converters, image converters. Yeah. Oversharing about life on social media. So there's another obvious one. Lock down your Facebook profiles. Don't make it so people you don't know can't see your photos or your information. I did some hosting on a senior leader in a business I worked at once, and I was able to get the name of his children, their birthdays, where he got married, his hobbies, how much his house was, where he lived, and I matched it to photos because he had an exposed Flickr account. So it's really, really important that we don't overshare about our lives on social media. And another interesting conversation I had the other day, right? We assume like everybody knows about ChatGPT and everybody knows about AI and voice cloning because we walk in those circles.
Yeah.
But if you go and grab a coffee and sit outside your local coffee shop and then look at the people that walk past and just think, would that person know about AI? Would that person know about AI? And I think the answer actually would be no. If you went and surveyed people in the street, a lot of people wouldn't know the stuff that we assume they know. So it's this stuff isn't cutting through like it completely, which I think is really important. Yeah, so they were a couple of interesting comments on there. There's loads more. Stop storing your passwords in your browser. Use a password manager. Hallelujah. That's yes. Don't store it in a password. Don't store your passwords in Chrome. Don't store your passwords in Edge or Firefox because they're not necessarily really secure. Yes, so there's loads more. We'll put a link to that article, that subreddit post in the newsletter, and you can chew through that for yourself.
Oh yeah, probably some fun things, funny stories, I'm sure, in there to hear about.
Yeah, there is. Yeah. One, actually, not using an ad blocker, especially if you plan to download any software. It's someone says I needed to download some pretty reputable tools when helping someone who doesn't use an ad blocker, and the whole page was filled with download here ads. And it's funny when you don't. I use an ad blocker all the time, and after uBlock Origin, I've stepped over to ad block. Yeah, which isn't as good. I still get Google AdWords, but the amount of ads I see now, and it's like, wow, a world without ad blockers was a really scary place. Like you get so used to a clean, lovely internet.
Yeah, it's almost like the days of pop-ups and when ads were really obvious. They've sort of come back. I think a lot of websites have ads, and you get all these pop-ups all the time saying, "Do you want to consent to ads?" and all this stuff. It's like everywhere.
What's really frustrating, and we discovered this ourselves. So there's a couple of cyber news sites that if we go to a link aggregator and then there's an interesting story, we'll go out to that site and it's a cyber news site. I won't name them now because I can't think of the exact name, but I went there and went to put a link in our newsletter, and it was like, for me, it was lovely and clean, and it was a very nice looking site, and it writes articles really well, right? You can really accessible. But then you went to the link and you were like, oh, that's full of ads. So I turned off my ad blocker and I was like, oh my God, that's horrible. I didn't realize because I had an ad blocker on. So it's, we don't share that website anymore. I get why they do it. They need money. They need funds. You know, we do this for free. We don't put ads anywhere. But we won't share links to their website again because there's too many ads and I don't trust it. So I don't think it would be responsible for us to do that. So,
No.
right. That's all we've got for that's everything we've got to go through this week. So all the words came out at once there. Yes. So thanks for listening. It's been a really interesting week. Loads of bits from Royal Mail hacks. We'll probably go into that in more detail next week as we find out more. Twitter breaches, sensitive army papers in the street. Man, buy your people a shredder, or don't let them print it out. Or like it's mad. Maybe that's like an old old organization meets new tech. No, it's not even new technology. Yeah. Anyway, that's all we've got time for this week. Subscribe to the newsletter at riskycreative.com or search for the awareness angle on LinkedIn. You can get it in your inbox every Monday or in your LinkedIn tray. They should call it that. Maybe they used to. LinkedIn tray every Monday morning that contains everything we've talked about in the show and a whole lot more. Connect with Luke. Come and see me at the National Cybersecurity Show. I'm just walking around. I'll have some business cards. So if you haven't got an Awareness Angle business card, you can get one. We just got a picture of me and Luke on. And yes, Leeds Digital Festival, get that in your calendar and come and join the conversation at Leeds. Brilliant.
Cool, yeah.
That's it.
Yeah. We'll also see next week, I guess, what happens to TikTok in the US.
Yes,
Probably nothing.
Probably nothing. TikTok might be no more, or I don't know. Elon Musk might buy them. Who knows?
Yeah.
Oh God. Okay.
It'll
Right.
it'll be extended for another 75 days, and then in 75 days time we'll be talking about it again.
Yeah, probably. Yeah. Find out more about TikTok in 4 episodes' time.
Yeah.
Right. See you next week.
Cool. Yeah. See you next week.
Lovely. Bye.
See you later.